Hello, hello, hello. Hola, hola, hola. Welcome to a new episode of the Yoga for All Bodies video podcast. As you can see on your screen, today I have an incredible guest for you. Jyoti Jo Manuel is one of the pioneers in the United Kingdom in the therapeutic yoga practices for children. She's particularly interested in supporting children with special needs. That's why she created Special Yoga. Through the practice of special yoga, she wants children to gain the most strength and balance in every way, to release their fears and to achieve what they have come into this life and this body to do. And of course, yoga gives them this opportunity and tools. Welcome, Jyoti.
Thank you. It's very lovely to be here with you today. Thank you.
I'm super excited to talk with you. When I found you on Instagram, I said, this is super needed. And it's a topic, special needs yoga, that in most teacher trainings is not even talked about. And it's so needed.
Mm-hmm. I agree. What can I say?
So I would like to start asking you, when and how did you start practicing yoga? Your own practice first.
My own practice. I stepped into my first yoga class in 1974, which of course was a very long time ago. And, in those days, yoga wasn't popular. It wasn't something that people did. It wasn't even something that people knew about, to be honest. And it was one of those beautiful aha moments for me of like, it felt like I'd found my own path of healing, my own and people talk about coming home. I'm not sure that was my experience, but it felt like this was the path I needed to be on. And it's been given to me, something very divine, actually.
Yes, I agree.
That was in London. And then in 77, I moved to New York. And I took up yoga very seriously at that time, and I never really looked back. And for me, it was always very much more of a spiritual practice. So in the first yoga class I went to in 74, I actually don't remember the physical practice at all. I remember the sensory experience of the smells, the sound. They were chanting a lot. I think it was a Shivananda class actually, and they sent me home with the Bhagavad Gita. And I was 17, and I thought, wow, this is really extraordinary, because the mind is such a a chaotic part of us, or can be. And I was really kind of struck by the by the philosophy, I suppose, and by the spiritual side of it. So that was really where I came to yoga from, whereas I think most people come from a more physical asana-based practice. Yeah.
But that's lovely. Yes, I also started my practice actually with yoga nidra when I was a teenager. Yes.
Beautiful. Yeah,
and I think that's the yoga that really impacts the way we face life and everything, more than the physical one, I would say.
Yeah, for me, that's certainly my experience. And the physical practice is great. I mean, I love practicing asanas, but it's not, for me, that's not the driving force of why I practice yoga. The driving force of why I practice yoga is more to be able to live more comfortably in my heart, to, live more peacefully, to, learn how to navigate the madness of my mind, really.
Yes. And when did you decide to become a teacher, and how was your teaching journey, and what led you to create Special Yoga?
Well, I didn't really plan on being a teacher, to be honest. I was encouraged by a teacher I was studying with in New York to go and teach. So in those days there was less. There weren't so many training courses in those days. There was still an aspect of kind of it being handed down through the kind of generational teacher to student opportunity. And I didn't feel particularly confident about teaching at that point, nor did I have any idea that it would involve children or children with special needs. That sort of, but as I just kind of opened to what was offered to me and the path that was in front of me, it kind of, that journey just kind of found its own evolution, I suppose. When I realized that disability in children were going to be quite impactful on my journey, I guess in 87, when I went back to London, I did start to teach relatively soon thereafter. And kind of just people with disabilities showed up in my classes. Teachers who asked me to come into their schools showed up in my classes, and all of a sudden this path was mapped out in front of me without any, I never drove it from that perspective. It was always driven through me. So, and clearly there's no question that this is what I was here to do in this lifetime. So,
No.
you know.
Beautiful journey.
Also, when I went into the first school to go and have a look and see what was really needed with the children, it was in a very deprived part of London, and the children were very fidgety and uncomfortable in their bodies, and they reminded me of me, of how I had experienced my own childhood of not being comfortable, really not wanting to be here, wanting to be out there somewhere, and I thought, actually, I know the feeling, I know what that feels like. And so all I can do really is to try and apply in some child-friendly way the tools that had impacted me and find ways to share them with them, and seemingly it seemed to work, really.
Beautiful journey. Yes. And when you first started working only with special needs children, were you caught by imposter syndrome, or were you nervous? How was your experience?
I think it came as a kind of process. I think that when I realized that was really going to be my path, somebody sent me Sonia Sumar's book, who's a Brazilian woman who's a pioneer of yoga for the special child, and I went to the States and studied with her, and she came back, and then I opened a yoga center in London that was the first center housing her work. And she asked me to teach her work, and I think I was one of the first, apart from her daughter, I think I was one of the first teachers sharing her practices. So when I had that behind me at that point, and she and I parted ways several years back now, which allowed me to kind of evolve my own journey with the work, and rather than following someone else's methodology, which I think is quite hard to be authentic in that. Because inevitably you need to find your way and your way of doing things. But, I remember the first time I had I was in the very early days, I was asked to work with a child with very, very, very profound autism. And, he was in his home, and he was in a padded room, and he was kind of moving around the room and, kind of seemingly not engaged with anything, And I just kind of sat in front of him, and I thought, I wonder how I'm going to meet you. And he was kneeling and flapping and, making lots of sounds. He was nonverbal, and beautiful child, though, very beautiful. And I would just sit there peacefully watching him and just, seeing where I could engage him or not engage him. And for 6 months, I felt like I didn't engage him. And then I rang the mum one day, and I just said, I don't know if I'm doing anything useful. It doesn't feel right. And she said to me, I don't know what you do, but he's better the day you come than any other day of the week. And then I thought to myself, that's so interesting, because actually it's not about what we do, it's about who we are. And if we hold that kind of invitational space, then, they're getting something from you, even if they're not looking at you, even if their back is turned to you, they know exactly where you are and what you're doing. And so then she came and joined me, and she showed me how to move him, because I wasn't confident about moving him, onto the mat, because he was quite resistant, but she kind of showed me how she did it. So that helped me build my confidence about, kind of the more of the physical encouragement of moving him and getting him on a mat. And, he stayed on the mat for 30 seconds, and then it was 5 minutes, and then some days he didn't go on the mat, and some days he came back on the mat. But it was more about just holding a space for him and, just sort of following him to see what he resonated with. And years on, he pulls his yoga mat out, regularly. He's in his 30s now, but, he's, I think early 30s. But, he pulls his yoga mat out and has done for years, because that's what he wants, because he knows inherently that there's something in it. So that seed was planted a very long time ago for him, So imposter syndrome, I'm not entirely sure what that means. I mean, I often feel like I know nothing anyway, and I think the more humble we are, I think the less we go in thinking we know anything, the better we are, because actually really at the end of the day, they're our teachers. So I share yoga with them, and they show me how to show up in life.
Thank you for sharing that journey. You mentioned some things that are really impactful. Starting that, one, you need to get the tools, but you don't need to let them stop you from doing the thing, to start sharing your message, and at the end of the day, changing lives. The story you're telling is giving tools for everyday life to live better in your own body, in your own mind.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And what would you say to, for example, a parent that is a little bit unsure of presenting yoga to a kid with special needs?
Mm-hmm.
What are
Well,
the benefits?
I think that we need to really think about what do we mean by yoga. And I think if I've had many parents over the years call me and say to me, my child won't sit still, or my child has physical disabilities and can't move on their own. So how on earth can they do yoga? Because their perception of yoga is a bunch of movements that you do, you turn yourself into a pretzel or you don't. And actually, it's not about that. And it's more about finding the pathway in, to help the child to still their nervous system, to build a kind of inner confidence and inner strength, supporting them to thrive in whatever form that might take for that child. So, our job then is less about how, it's I don't think you need to be a yoga teacher. I think you need to practice for yourself. I think you need to embody very simple tools, not easy to do, but simple tools that really are about a presence. Because when we create our presence, what we know more than anything in science is telling us is that the resonance of our heart is much greater than the thoughts. So if we can really kind of hold a different kind of loving space for the child and give the child an invitation to calm, to, it might be through massage, it might be through deep pressure, it might be through movement, it's always through breath. But how do we access the breath for a child is different in different children. But they're not going to access their breath if you haven't accessed yours. So, I think for a parent, it's really, it really depends on what your perception is and what your expectations are. And my experience tells me that the more you drop your expectations and the more you invite and create an environment that's invitational for the child to come into, the child will come.
Lovely. Yes, yes, yes. And now that you're mentioning that it's super important how also the parent shows up to this, do you also train teachers and you also train parents?
We train parents. I mean, I worked for years and years and years with parents, with pediatric professionals, with educators, with yoga teachers, with, anybody that cares for, carers. I've been around the world and worked in orphanages. So I've worked with the orphanage workers. I mean, anybody really that has these children in their care, And I think the thing that I've learned, I think that the thing that I've learned the most is my state matters. And, if I'm calm and open-hearted and I have no judgment around you or your behaviors, but I can open my heart to you and see you as a child rather than the behavior, see you as the child rather than your condition, see you as the magnificence of you being the child, then actually I can meet you in a very different place than if I'm trying to look at, well, you've got arms like this, how do I undo them? Or, you're jumping off the walls because you're autistic or you've got ADHD, and how do I get you down? Because then I'm in my thought process, and what I'm not doing is I'm not meeting you. And if I can meet you, then I can work out how best to work with you to release the tension, to calm the nervous system, to do whatever's needed for you in that moment. So our programs are about building a toolbox so that you have a key to every child. And the key, ultimately, the tools are only ever as good as you are. So and I'm also not training people to be yoga teachers. That's not my role in life. I'm teaching you accessible, easy to deliver, easy to practice as well, tools that when you embody them and you understand them, you know how to deliver them. And that might come through sound, it might come through massage, it might come through touch, it might come through breath work, it might come through movement, it might come through yoga nidra, deep relaxation, it might come through any different pathway. So the bigger the toolbox that you have, the more likely you are to be able to find, then you have what you need to find to get into that, to be able to access that child, and also to know what they need, because it's not a one size fits all.
That in that line, I was going to ask you, the process is teaching one-on-one, or you can also teach group classes?
We do both.
Oh,
So it's a different process. When you have a group, you have to work with the energy of the group as opposed to working with one child. So you learn to kind of hold a more comfortable space. And, if a child leaves the mat, they leave the mat. If you keep it open to an invitational, you'll know when you need to catch them to bring them back, or they'll come back on their own anyway. But it's also just holding, it's a different, it becomes a different way of working when you've got a group, but it's equally beneficial. And also, you
amazing.
working together and interacting together, that's really quite beautiful as well.
I can imagine. Yes. And one more time, it's giving tools that are going to allow you to live better in your own body, in your own mind.
Definitely. I mean, that's what we have. I think for me, that's the most important thing is tools that will allow you to be more present, to be more embodied, to be here, and to be more comfortable, just in being who you are. So that you can find your own pathways to build your own strength, to build your own flexibility, to build your own courage, to build your own heart. Yeah, all of those things, really. And also learn to manage the mind in the same way that you would, the meditation gives an adult. There's no reason why kids can't meditate either,
Absolutely. And what would you say that is the main difference between a traditional kids yoga class and a special needs?
Well, that's kind of a slightly difficult question for me, only because, I am one of the pioneers of children's yoga in the UK. And, when I first started teaching children's yoga, there was no play yoga. There was no games. There were none of that stuff existed. No one had started to, maybe they'd been doing it in their own homes or whatever, but it wasn't a way of being. So I always came to yoga from a therapeutic perspective of, what does this child need? How do I make it child friendly without making it a game? Because children don't need to play yoga. It doesn't teach them what yoga is if they're playing. I want children, for me, what you do on the mat, you need to be able to take off the mat. And if I'm just playing games with you, there's nothing to take off the mat, really. So and I also feel that, we are in a disembodied existence and generational time in the world. And what we need is more embodiment. So I don't want to play games that take you out your body. I want the child to come into their body and learn how to be comfortable and peaceful in their bodies. So for me, whether irrespective of any child, I would teach the same way. But I think that a lot of the yoga that's coming through today is quite excitable, and they're trying to keep the children engaged, and and their energy for me is not yoga on any level. It's not yoga. It's because what I want the children to do is to learn how to settle, how to be still, and learn how to be. And I think that's what we have to learn how to do anyway, because we're human beings, not human doings. And we've become an existence of, we have to do this and we have to do that, and we have, and actually we don't. And I think one of the things that, if anything, COVID's teaching us anything right now, is learning to be still.
Yes.
We're being told to do. You have to stay home, be still, stay home.
I totally agree. I agree with you. Yeah, I even see in some schools that they are adding yoga, and it's one more task, one more thing that you need to do in the day. And it's true that you are amping the energy instead of telling them, listen to your body. If you need to be still, stay still. If you need to jump. but do what you're, yes, totally agree.
I think there are breath, body, mind practices that take you to stillness, so we don't need to play games. We can just do them, and do them in child-friendly language, and I think we underestimate the capacity of children anyway. If you talk to their higher selves don't want to be bouncing off the walls.
Absolutely. And you mentioned COVID. So I would like to know how the way you were teaching before the pandemic and now during the pandemic has evolved.
Well, when COVID hit and we all hit lockdown in March last year, we converted all our courses online. So we now have an online platform which offers, training courses. And what was really, I had no idea whether they were going to work or not. I spent months and months and months creating them. But what was really interesting for me was that the people that took the courses, well, there were a number of things. There's one, finally I can study with you because I haven't been able to. I haven't been in the right place or the right time or had the right childcare. And the other thing was that people found that having an extended period of time to delve into the practices allowed them to really embody them. And I think a lot of the feedback that we got from the first courses that we ran that just finished recently was that people found that a lot of the tools that we were offering were actually lifesavers for them during that time, which was really amazing, as well. And they could really see the benefits of being able to really, drop into the heart, really drop into a place of stillness and calm within yourself, and what the impact that had on the children. And whether they were teachers or parents, the feedback actually on some occasions made me cry. It was so powerful. So we're now online and we have an online platform. So that's been really helpful. And we're going to continue working online at the moment. Well, obviously you'll have to at the moment anyway, but I think that there's something really valuable in that. And, it's blended learning. So I'm on all the webinars, and you have self-study time and you have practice time and you have study groups and a little bit of support from our team. And so actually what you do is you have, you come out the other end with a lot more knowledge and understanding because you've really had the opportunity to embody it.
Oh, amazing. And I imagine that now you can learn with you from anywhere in the world.
Yeah, I mean, that was the other thing. We've had people coming in from all parts of the world, which is really amazing, actually, to be sitting in my house, and I'm not used to being still either. I'm used to traveling all over the place. I was traveling extensively before COVID. So, and actually have people on from, Australia and America and Canada and South America and Europe and Middle East. And you're just like, wow, it really is extraordinary,
Love it. Yes. And I'm going to ask you a question that I ask all the guests, but I don't know if it applies in this case. But Yoga for All Bodies is all about creating variations and using props for your practice. So I would like to know if you have a favorite yoga prop. Only one.
I guess for me personally, it's my bolster.
Love it.
Because I can lay over it from all sorts of positions. So I really enjoy working with the bolster, actually.
Awesome. And do you use props with children or not recommended?
Working restoratively with the children, we use props. If not, sometimes the props can be really distracting. So there are times when actually no props is more helpful because you'll get the kids biting blocks or, you know what I mean? So fiddling, the more that they have to fiddle with for those kinds of kids is probably not helpful. Certainly for the children with physical disabilities, props are often needed to support the child in lying down because they can't go flat, or support the child in just realigning their body and things like that. And then certainly for restorative practices, we definitely use props, yeah.
Ooh, love it. And what advice would you give to a parent, to a teacher that is now watching this interview and maybe has that light inside of them that they want to offer this gift of yoga to special needs kids? What would you say?
Wow, that's a bit of a big question. But I would suggest that the best thing that you can do for your child is to really enhance the quality of your own breathing and really use, slow your breath down and just find some stillness in yourself and in your heart, because that actually becomes the conversation that you then have with the child. We forget that our breath is also a conversation. It's our prana, it's our energy. And energy is a form of communication. 80% of communication is nonverbal. And if we can really keep our hearts super wide open and really sustain a much calmer nervous system and really just breathe deeply for ourselves, that offering to another is huge. That and listening.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful suggestion. And finally, how can people find you and how can people find Special Yoga? Promote yourself, give all the information.
Okay, so our online platform, which has all our courses on it, which has short courses, free resources, as well as our training courses, is www.specialyoga.thinkific.com. We also have a website which is not hugely active because mainly our focus has been on our online platform, but it's www.specialyoga.org.uk. And we will soon be launching an app called Special Yoga, which you'll find in the Apple Shop or the Google Shop, wherever you find apps from, which I'm hoping will be launched certainly by the end of the month. Yeah.
Amazing.
So
Love it.
Find us. Special
Yeah.
Yoga. .org.uk, specialyoga.thinkific.com.
And also the content that you share on social media, it's amazing.
Thank you.
Yes, tools. I love that you put interviews about their experience. Yes, love it. So if you're watching this video, go and follow the Instagram. You will not regret it.
So Special Yoga Global on Instagram.
Yes, go and do it. Go and follow. And if you're watching this video, like it, share it, subscribe, because we really need to share the message that yoga is for all bodies.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. What a privilege to be here with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing your journey, your passion, and for making a difference in the world, in the yoga world, and for the most important thing that are children. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Okay.
See you at your home. And I will see you very soon in a new episode of the Yoga for All Bodies video podcast.